Imagine this. You're standing in a room with a switch. On the other side of a thin wall, someone you can't see is strapped to a chair. Each time you press the switch, you hear a scream. Sharp, raw, unmistakably human. You've been told they made a mistake. They deserve correction. A man in a white lab coat nods. Continue, he says. It's important. And so, you do. Not because you enjoy it, not because you're a monster, but because you've been told it's necessary. Now, stop. Let that sit. You, a decent person, someone who holds the door for strangers, laughs at dogs in sweaters, texts friends back. You just tortured someone because someone else said it was okay. What does that make you? No, really. What does that make you? This is not fiction. It happened, again and again. In one of the most disturbing psychological studies ever conducted, ordinary people, teachers, secretaries, delivery drivers, were asked to deliver electric shocks to strangers under the supervision of a man in a white coat. And most did. Not because they were evil, but because something inside them, something inside all of us, cracked open under the right pressure. That's the paradox, isn't it? We think evil wears a face, a villain's sneer, bloodied hands, a dictator's flag. We forget how often it wears a clean shirt, smiles politely, washes dishes, says, "Just doing my job." But here's the truly unsettling thought. What if the line between good and evil isn't a line at all, but a door? A door anyone can walk through, given the right key. Could you? Could you betray your values with enough social pressure? Could you harm someone if the world told you it was noble? If you were protecting your country, your family, your future? Would you even realize what you'd become until it was too late? We want to believe we're better. We want to believe we'd stand up, say no, walk away. But history whispers otherwise. From concentration camps to corrupt institutions, evil is rarely born from cruelty alone. It's born from obedience, from silence, from ordinary people like you, like me. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. So the real question isn't how could they, it's how do we stop ourselves? Let's go deeper. Evil rarely announces itself with horns and fire. It slips in quietly, through routine, through protocol, through roles we adopt without question. You are not born a guard or a prisoner, you become one. In 1971, a basement at Stanford University became a prison. Philip Zimbardo, a psychology professor, selected healthy, stable students and split them into two roles, guards and inmates. Within days, the transformation was grotesque. Guards began humiliating prisoners, forcing them to strip, wear bags over their heads, sleep on concrete. Some prisoners broke down emotionally, and the guards, they felt justified. It was just an experiment, just a role. But what role are you playing right now, without even knowing it? Carl Jung called it the shadow, the part of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. He said, the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. In other words, the more you convince yourself that you are a good person, the more blind you may become to the capacity for cruelty that still lives within you, repressed, dormant, waiting. And when the system hands you a uniform, a title, a justification, that shadow stretches out. What Zimbardo uncovered wasn't just a fluke of environment. It was a mirror to the human psyche. The truth is, evil isn't always seductive. Sometimes it feels like duty. That's what makes it so terrifying. Friedrich Nietzsche once warned, "He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster." But what if the transformation doesn't come from rage, but from routine, from repetition, from convincing yourself that what you're doing isn't bad because everyone else is doing it too? We are social creatures, programmed by evolution to conform, to obey, to adapt. But this adaptation has a dark price. When society tilts, so do we. Look at the Milgram experiment. Yale University, 1961. Participants believed they were administering real electric shocks to a stranger for every wrong answer. Many hesitated, some protested, but 65%, nearly 2 out of every 3, went all the way to the maximum voltage. Why? Because a man in a white lab coat told them to. No threat, no gun, just authority. Jean-Paul Sartre would have called this bad faith, a way of lying to ourselves to avoid the burden of freedom. We hide behind roles, behind rules. I was just following orders. It's not my responsibility. This is how it's always been. And yet, behind that lie is a terrifying freedom. You chose it. That's the root of the problem. The potential for evil doesn't reside out there. It's in here. In the subtle machinery of your mind, in the quiet urges you suppress. in the moral compromises you justify to stay comfortable. And society knows this. It exploits it. It creates systems where roles strip away accountability, where uniforms erase identity, where people become functions, not souls. You don't scream at a man, you scream at a customer service rep. You don't hate a person, you hate a protester, a criminal, a refugee. You don't kill a human, you kill a terrorist. And the more you categorize, the less you empathize. The less you empathize, the easier it is to act without guilt. So no, evil is not the presence of hatred, it's the absence of reflection. But you're not doomed, you're not helpless. Because what has been learned can be unlearned. The question is, will you dare to see the shadow before it consumes you? Let's trace what happens when we don't. When that invisible infection spreads, and the consequences no longer hide behind lab coats and walls. It never begins with chaos. It begins with quiet. One compromise, one ignored feeling, one voice you silence inside yourself. You laugh at the cruel joke at work, even though it unsettled you. You nod along to a rule you know is wrong because you're afraid to be the one who says no. You look away when someone is mistreated, telling yourself you're not responsible. And then one day, you wake up in a world where cruelty is common and compassion is rare. Not because evil took over, but because good people fell asleep. You don't need to be a tyrant to enable tyranny. You just need to stay silent long enough. This is the slow erosion of the soul, where evil no longer shocks you because you've learned to call it something else: policy, order, necessity, survival. Neuroscience offers a disturbing lens. The brain adapts to repeated behavior. The more often you act in conflict with your conscience, the quieter that inner voice becomes. Your amygdala, responsible for empathy and emotional alarms, literally desensitizes. The horror you once felt turns into indifference. This is why atrocities don't feel like atrocities to the people committing them. Their minds have adjusted. Morality has become numb, and culture doesn't help. It rewards obedience. It punishes dissent. It sells you comfort and distraction so you won't notice the moral decay around you. You scroll past footage of war, famine, injustice. Your heart clenches for a second. Then you double tap, swipe, and forget. Not because you don't care, but because the world taught you to normalize despair. This is the shadow of what Carl Jung warned about. When we refuse to meet the darkness inside us, we project it outward. We call others evil, barbaric, inhuman, never noticing how quickly we become those very things when the mirror turns. Cognitive dissonance creeps in. You start justifying decisions you would have once questioned. I'm just doing what I'm told. I don't have a choice. This is how the world works. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that evil was deeply tied to the human illusion of separateness. The moment you stop seeing others as extensions of yourself, the moment you stop recognizing their pain as your pain, evil becomes not only possible, it becomes efficient. You don't kill a man, you eliminate a problem. You don't betray a friend, you protect your image. You don't stay silent because you agree, you stay silent because it's easier. And in that silence, a seed is planted. Entire systems grow from that seed, systems that thrive on dehumanization, fueled not by villains, but by ordinary people avoiding discomfort. Think of history's worst crimes: the Holocaust, apartheid, genocides, ethnic cleansings. None were the work of one man or even one ideology. They were the collective shrug of millions, convinced they were doing what needed to be done. This is not just historical, it's personal. The unseen consequence of letting your morality become passive is that you start forgetting who you are. Your identity fractures, your values dissolve, and you become, slowly, without drama, part of a machine that you once swore you'd never fuel. But there's still time. The system may be rigged, but you're not a cog unless you choose to be. There's a way out of this, but only if you're willing to rebel. Not with anger, but with awareness. Not with violence, but with radical conscience. Let's find out what it takes to break the cycle and reclaim your power. You don't fight the darkness by screaming at it. You fight it by turning on the light within yourself. But here's the truth. That light doesn't come from perfection. It comes from awareness. From choosing every single day to see things as they are, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Because the moment you see, really see, the spell begins to break. Philip Zimbardo, the same man who ran the Stanford Prison Experiment, didn't leave us in despair. He introduced a concept just as powerful as the Lucifer effect, the heroic imagination project. His message? If ordinary people can be seduced into evil, they can also be trained into heroism. Not the loud, dramatic kind, but the quiet, everyday rebellion of choosing empathy over apathy, truth over silence, courage over comfort. You don't need a cape, you need consciousness. Think of whistleblowers, teachers who challenge biased systems, bystanders who step in when they see harassment. Their acts often look small on the surface, but they ripple, and sometimes they shatter entire illusions. To break free from the pull of darkness, you must begin with the smallest and hardest step, owning your mind. Nietzsche urged us to become who we are, but that means shedding the roles others gave you. The obedient student, the compliant worker, the passive citizen. It means asking, what do I actually believe? What am I complicit in? Where have I chosen safety over soul? It also means staring into your own shadow and refusing to look away. Jung was clear. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You want to resist the systems that numb you? Start by noticing what you ignore. Watch how quickly you justify actions when a group agrees with you. Watch the thrill of moral superiority, how it tempts you to label others as less human. Watch your own defenses when someone challenges your beliefs. These are clues, each one a doorway to liberation, if you dare walk through. But rebellion isn't just introspective, it's collective. You were conditioned into silence by culture, but you can be deconditioned through connection. Find people who ask hard questions, who don't flinch from discomfort, who hold mirrors, not masks, because one brave voice alone can be silenced. But a few brave voices together, that's revolution. Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz not by brute strength, but by finding meaning in his suffering. He discovered that the only true freedom left to man, when all else is stripped away, is the freedom to choose his response. His insight, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies your power. That's your rebellion, refusing to react automatically. You are not your role. You are not your past obedience. You are not what the system trained you to be. You are a mind, a will, a fire. And here's the radical truth no one told you. Resisting evil starts in the mundane. In the moment you choose to speak up, to apologize, to question, to help, to pause before reacting. It won't feel heroic. It may not feel like anything at all, but that's how light returns. Subtle, quiet, real. Because the goal isn't to feel righteous, it's to stay awake. And once you do, really deeply, you begin to see how much of the world is sleepwalking. How many minds are trapped in default scripts? How many hearts have forgotten their depth? You can't wake them all, but you can wake yourself. And maybe, just maybe, you can help others do the same. But before you walk away thinking this is a self-help sermon wrapped in psychology, stop. There's one final realization. One truth that reframes all of this. And it's not what you think. It's easy to imagine evil as something outside of you. It's harder to admit it was never outside. The final truth is not that evil turns good people bad. It's that there is no clear line between good and evil at all. The line runs through the center of every human heart. It isn't static, it shifts. With each decision, each silence, each excuse, each act of courage. And that line right now is in motion inside you. That's the most haunting realization of all. You are the battlefield, not the world, not history, not politics. You. You are both the prisoner and the guard, the savior and the betrayer, the voice that says no more and the one that stays silent. You are not one thing. You are 1,000 potential selves waiting for conditions to awaken them. Under stress, you could betray. Under fear, you could obey. Under love, you could transcend. And if you think that's too much responsibility, good. It means you're starting to understand. We don't like to carry this weight. We want to offload it to gods, governments, groups, systems, but freedom demands that we reclaim it. That's why Sartre said, man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. There's no escape route, no authority to hide behind. You are radically responsible for what you become. And that truth, it will burn, but it will also set you free, because once you know this, you can no longer pretend. You begin to live awake. You feel every word you speak, every silence you hold, every yes you say when you mean no. This is the true heroism Zimbardo called for. Not grand gestures, but small awakenings. Choosing to stand when it's easier to kneel. choosing to see when it's easier to scroll, choosing to love when it's easier to label. Evil thrives in the spaces we refuse to see. But the moment you look inward, truly, painfully, bravely, you become dangerous to the system that feeds on your sleep. You become free. So ask yourself now, not, would I ever do something evil, but how will I know when I already am? And more importantly, will I have the strength to stop? You won't always get it right, but you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be awake, because the world doesn't need more good people. It needs conscious ones. You are not here to obey blindly. You are here to choose, moment by moment, who you become. And that choice, that's where redemption lives. That's where light begins. That's where you begin. If this made you question what you're truly capable of, wait until you see what we're uncovering next. Subscribe to Intuitra, because the most unsettling truths are still waiting to be revealed.